What's going on, YouTube family? Have you guys ever heard the terminology, you can't fix stupid? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be talking about today, the auto loan crisis. Now, the reason why we got in this mess is because banks were frivolously lending the last 4 years. They were giving people crazy loans that they should have never been approved for and basically lending on collateral that wasn't even worth it. And because of this, banks hit record high delinquencies, defaults, and lost billions of dollars. Now, after 24 months of them losing money, what have they learned? That's what we're going to talk about today. Now, if anybody's been trying to buy a car for the last 24 months, they've probably noticed that banks have gotten a little bit stricter when it comes to their lending. They've asked for bigger down payments, solid job time. They want to make sure the car is a decent car, not something that has a bunch of miles. They're loaning closer, more to LTV than they were before, which is loan to value, and a lot of other things. Banks always shift the numbers to make sure that they're in a good position when it comes to risk. And so after seeing this, I figured they were going to tighten up even more because they said that there's been another spike and another record high hit when it comes to delinquencies and defaults. But when I got these numbers back from Cox Automotive to see what the automotive market was doing in Q2, or basically the rest of this year, I was absolutely shocked. So as of 2025, so far, 23.8% of the auto loans are 84 months or above. Now, this is the exact thing that I was talking about. When they start giving out 84-month loans just to push out more cars to make manufacturers happy, this is what they were doing instead of lowering the price for cars or lowering the interest rate. So now there's millions of Americans all across the United States that purchase cars for 84 months. Now remember, the average car depreciates, I believe it was almost 15% annually. 84 months, this thing is going to be worth nothing by the time you pay it off. Now, this also ties in to one of the other things I'm going to be talking about. 54.9% of car buyers had negative equity. So think about this. This is probably the biggest thing that scares the hell out of me, is that over 50% of people that purchased a car this year that got an auto loan were already negative in their other auto loans. Now, when I made my first video about the auto loan crisis, I talked about how dealerships were basically robbing future sales, and they laughed at me. It went all over CNN, Fox News. People were freaking out about it. It's pretty cool if you want to Google it. But that was one of the things that I kept talking about is when you overcharge people so much money and you keep burying people in the loans, you're robbing your future sales. And that's exactly what happened. Once the banks collapsed and they started losing all this money, they didn't want to keep adding more negative equity on the auto loans. So for over 2 years, banks basically put a pause on this. And this is why you see dealers talking about low sales. They're not selling new cars. And this is one of the things that actually help bring used and new car prices down, because the people that always want to buy the latest thing to get the new things couldn't, because they were so impacted with debt. And on top of that, once the banks started changing their lending, they did want to keep getting people into negative equity and be in a bad situation, because the banks wind up holding the bag and losing all the money. But as you can see here, how do they offset this? Well, they got a lot of debt and they're upside down in their cars. Well, let's sell them this $40,000 car for $50,000. We'll just throw on that negative $10,000 of equity, and we'll give them 84 months to make it more manageable. So now the dealership sells another car, the bank gets another person that's happily in debt, and the retard consumer gets the car that they want that they really can't afford. And it absolutely blew my mind. Now, I keep telling everybody this. This is just going to get worse. I don't know why they keep letting people get away with this. If you can't afford the car, you should not be able to go out and buy another one and put yourself in further in debt. Now, another one that's pretty scary is that 22% of the auto loans that were issued so far this year has had a payment over $1,000. Let that sink in. They keep saying that the average car payment's like $740, but if 20% or 22% of the population has a payment over $1,000, what does that mean? That doesn't include maintenance, service. On top of that, everything else, insurance. It's an absolutely insane number. And think about this, that $1,000 payment includes new and used cars with that. So everybody keeps talking about, we have an affordability problem here in the United States when it comes to car stuff. I guarantee you, if the banks were not allowed to lend like they were before, it would completely change the game. Manufacturers would stop building 4x4 crew cab trucks with massaging seats and just make working, good crew cab trucks that people can buy that are affordable. Now, if you've ever purchased a home, when you go get a loan, it's all about your debt to income ratio. And on top of that, they look at all of your actual debt as a real thing, and they check your income and they verify everything even down to your tax returns to make sure that you're qualified for a house. And I kept saying this. I think the Fed should probably step in and do this. Before I was against this, but now I'm actually for it because Americans are literally car poor. There are so many people now with crazy student loan debts, crazy credit card debts, and auto loans, they will never, ever be able to afford a home. And this is a sad thing. I've seen people literally working at Taco Bell with a brand new Tesla Model Plaid sitting in the actual parking lot. I'm sure you guys can go to any like trashy, dirty apartment complex, and I promise you will see nice, newer cars, probably nicer than the ones you're driving, sitting in there. It doesn't make any sense. But the more they do these stupid lending laws, like we gotta keep America moving. We gotta keep giving out money to everybody that really can't afford it. And all this does is this gets consumers buying, but it hurts people like us that are either doing business or trying to plan for the future. We're absolutely getting destroyed by inflation and having to overpay to compete with these idiots that are so willing to get themselves into debt to buy a car they simply can't afford. I know they'll never release the numbers of how many of these cars are actually going to repo lots, but I'm sure it's extremely high. Every single week when I go to either Mannheim or Odessa, I'm seeing the amount of repos at the auction getting bigger and bigger, especially when it comes to no sales. Now, every time a car goes to an auction, they basically sit there anywhere from 30 to 60 days, depending on the lending laws in that state. And that's why if you drive by any auction, you'll see literally hundreds, if not thousands of cars sitting in the parking lot. And every week they're rolling them through the auction. And as they roll them through the auction, dealers like me bid on them. And when we don't want to bid what they owe on it, and that's the big problem right now, is if it's a $30,000 car and it rolls through and I bid 30 and they owe $45,000 or $50,000, that's what the bank gave them 2 years ago, they want that money. And so it keeps rolling through and more every single week. These cars keep adding up and it just gets worse. There are too many people out there that are absolutely car poor and completely tapped out. Now, I figured that after reading this numbers, I was like, Cox has got to be wrong. But as I talked to bankers I know, dealers I know, and even Automotive News actually had a segment out there saying that the lending requirements are getting loosened just to help automotive dealerships start lending and selling cars again. And, this is a good thing in some ways because I do want people to get their dream cars, but unfortunately there are too many people out there buying cars they cannot afford. So I hate to say this. I think the government needs to step in and start regulating some of this stuff. I would never say that unless we got to this point, but what's going to happen, and the reason why I'm so against this is because as more cars get repoed and banks start losing money, they're going to look for somebody to bail them out, and it's probably going to be the government. Once the government starts giving them money, it's going to be a wrap. They're going to start charging you a crazy amount of interest because remember, every time somebody defaults, it's you and me that pay the higher interest rates that balance out those auto loans in their portfolio. So this is why it's very hard to get low rates unless you're getting some sort of deal from a captive lender when it comes to buying a car from a dealership. Even if you go to your local credit union and you have an amazing relationship with them and you've worked very hard to pay off multiple cars, RVs, houses, boats, whatever else, they still can't give you that great of a deal because you have to pay basically for the sins of everybody else that got a loan and basically dipped out on it or just stopped paying it. So unfortunately, this is just something that's spiraling out of control. I thought they're really going to tighten down for the next 2 years. And because of all the crazy lending they did in 2022, remember, every time they give an auto loan, it could be anywhere from 5 to 7 years, as you can see here. And all the loans they gave out from 2020 to 2023 are still there. And now we're adding even more bad loans after this. The auto loan crisis just keep getting kicked down the road. It's just going to keep getting worse, and it's going to hurt everybody involved. They just need to just turn off the faucet, let dealers and banks basically eat it for a little bit and start to figure out how do we lower prices of these cars? How do we make cars more affordable? Because now with every manufacturer saying that they're going to stop making affordable economy cars, just making more 4x4 crew cab trucks with massaging seats, we're in for a world of hurt because it's going to be nothing but $80,000 cars and trucks left. There's going to be nothing that's affordable. And unfortunately, they're going to be offering, if you don't believe me, watch. We're at 84 months now. During the pandemic, there was banks that were offering 96 months. I don't think we're too far away from that. Anyways, I'd love to know your opinion in the comment section below. Do you think that we should have some sort of regulatory body or the government come in and actually structure auto loans the way they do mortgages? I'd love to hear from you guys down below. Also follow me on Instagram at Lucky Lopez, and we'll see you next time.